Welcome to What the Force, and we're doing a discussion on Rogue One today. And with me is Liam.
Hello.
And James.
Howdy, folks.
And I'm Marie-Claire, your host. And it's great to have these guys back because we end up having the most fun discussions all together. So let's get started. First, we're going to be kind of talking about where Rogue One falls in the continuum. It actually bumps right up into the start of New Hope. It's minutes, maybe a half an hour before the start of A New Hope, episode 4. It certainly starts out kind of in a different vein than the other episodes, and it was the first of the Star Wars stories. It didn't have the opening crawl, much like the other Star Wars stories and some of the other content that had happened previously. So even some of the cartoons, like Clone Wars, had sort of a crawl type situation. This was the first time there was no crawl, and it was the first Star Wars movie, with the exception of the Clone Wars movie, that did not have the music of John Williams as the conductor and composer. So lots of changes as far as this Star Wars story. The idea, just kind of briefly for Rogue One, came out of the opening crawl for A New Hope, of the events that had just transpired before A New Hope began. So generally, I want to just kind of have this be a loose discussion about kind of the things that we liked, didn't like, kind of some of the things that we noticed about Rogue One, and see where this leads us. So to start out, let's start with Liam, because we haven't heard your voice in a little while in the podcast. What did you like about Rogue One?
Well, I honestly, as much as it pains me to maybe be a little bit disloyal to Empire, I think Rogue One might be my favorite Star Wars movie of all of them. I loved pretty much the entire thing beginning to end. My two biggest things that I really appreciated about this one is my feelings on the prequels is fairly established, that I thought that they were maybe not done as well as they could be, and kind of took away from the epic nature of Star Wars and from the seriousness of it. This one I found bumping right up against episode 4 as it is. I find this one really improves episode 4. Like it really gives a feel that when people at the very beginning of A New Hope are reacting, and things like Vader already basically being at a 10 in terms of rage and things like that. And I know you have these plans, and why is this guy so mad? And now, after watching Rogue One, you can see that he watched them hand them over and fly away. He knows he's mad that they're lying to his face.
It's like, look, dude, I was literally there. I saw you.
I was right there. I did my Jason Voorhees stomping through the hallway monster movie moment, which was freaking amazing. So you can see why he's so mad. The other thing, and it's something that it doesn't really tie into Star Wars as a theme or anything exactly Star Wars related, but something that I really appreciated about this movie that I think more movies really need to do is the two primary characters, Jyn and Cassian, it's a male and female lead, and they did not force a romantic subplot.
Oh my God, yes.
The most romantic that they get is right at the end when everything is blowing up and the audience is going, holy crap, they're going to kill the entire cast. Is they sit there, they embrace, and it's more of an acknowledgement between peers that we did what we needed to do and now it's going to end. And they didn't make the kiss happen. Like it seems to be so forced in a lot of movies that I really loved that they didn't go for that here.
Yeah, it felt like companionship and like support at the end, and they knew they were going to die, and that was like such a powerful moment.
Mm-hmm. And it could have been 2 men, it could have been 2 women. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any difference because it's just 2 people that had gone through this huge experience together, and they were at the end.
Yeah, it could have been any one of the people of the Rogue One crew that were invading Scarif. doing that same scene and it would have felt the same. Great.
It would have been
points.
equally powerful regardless of the relationship.
Great points. James, what did you like?
I'll start out with this one. It was the Star Wars movie that told me I was a little apprehensive after, Force Awakens. It was a good movie. I enjoyed that. But this one was the one who told me Disney knows what the fans want. They're willing to try new things, and they're willing to they're willing to continue the Star Wars universe without totally rehashing everything over and over again. That's the big love I liked out of this. I walked out of the movie just in awe. I loved all the little details. I love the fact that they decided to take Look, the builder's going to go into concepts about the armor. Wow, what a surprise there.
No, that's good. This is like your specialty, though.
I loved all the details they put in there. I love the fact that all the armor looks like it should be in A New Hope. And I don't mean because in A New Hope, that stuff was being, mass produced for the episode as they needed it. There was speckles stuck on it. This stuff was falling apart. But this armor was, like, every one of the Stormtroopers' armor looks like a stylized version of what it really should have been back then if this had been real. And it was just, the details were incredible. I loved all the story. I loved the fact that, we got to see all around the universe. We got to see some new worlds. We got to see... Well, we kind of got to see the darker side of the rebellion, because, the rebellion, you can't really be goody two-shoes. You can't just be, oh, look, we're all happy, we're all going to save the universe. These were the people that did whatever it took to get things done.
Well, and when it comes down to it, these guys in the rebellion, they are, by definition, terrorists. So they are, even if they're doing good things or they're doing things for the greater good, this really dirties up the rebellion, and it shows the lengths that they are having to go to in order to stay in this fight.
Oh, yeah. And that was some of the great stuff. All the characters. I love the humor. Are you kidding me? I'm blind. Sorry, not are you kidding me? I'm blind. Are you kidding me when they blindfolded
when they put the hood over?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was it was Star Wars appropriate humor. Like it was like Han Solo level humor. It didn't feel inappropriate ever.
Oh no, and this was a Star Wars movie. But it wasn't following the Skywalker line. Well, there was a Skywalker in it.
You're like, God damn it. And the droids were there. The C-3PO and R2-D2, they made an appearance.
Let's not forget
and
Chopper.
Warwick Davis.
And Warwick Davis, yes. All of the cameos were there.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I can keep going on and on and on, but that was, like, I really did, like, Rogue One left me in awe. I loved it, and it was just, it was a true Star Wars movie, and that proved to me, like I said, Disney knows what they were doing.
Yeah, no, so it did a few things for me, and you already mentioned the darker side of the rebellion because, terrorists, they sometimes had to use dirtier methods. Cassian straight up kills a guy on screen at the start of the movie. We see more about the internal workings of the Empire and how they get stuff done and how they work, which I found really actually very fascinating. I really loved the sort of being able to capture in one movie the true start of the formalized rebellion, because really before the big battle on Scarif, they were just fartsing around. They like...
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I just finished watching the scene where they're like, this is the first time our forces are all together.
Yeah. This is like... And we see the rebellion in its little cell form in Star Wars Rebels, but this is the first time they actually, like, felt like it meant something. And that leads directly into New Hope and the attack on the Death Star run. And actually, like, that big change in the universe where the balance is shifting. From a high level perspective, I loved the world building that this movie did. They named the worlds, except for Mustafar, which I thought was super interesting that they didn't name Vader's home planet, like his castle's planet where he, had all his limbs burned off at one point. Like they didn't actually have the name come up on the screen, but every other planet, Jedha, Scarif, the starting planet with Jyn when she was a kid, they named all of them, and then they were all unique and interesting. And I think at one point, Gareth Edwards actually said, like, well, if you want to go to paradise, write a movie and set it in paradise. Like he made a joke about that with Scarif. I loved the first time that we actually get to see a cartoon created character cross over into the Star Wars universe. Having Saw Gerrera have almost his own life story within the Star Wars canon through the different media. So starting in Clone Wars, going to Rebels. And he was actually in Rebels the episode after Rogue One premiered. But, kind of telling the more of his story after seeing kind of his end in Rogue One was really neat to see, and having him played by such a fabulous actor, as well as Darth Vader and all of his Vader stuff. And I'd like to go into that in a little bit and discuss the Vader stuff specifically. And then
we're going to talk about Vader stuff.
Vader stuff. Yeah, we'll talk about Vader stuff. And then also just the addition of a robot with attitude that just reminds me of HK-47 from KOTOR from Knights of the Old Republic, K2SO. And he was a wonderful add to the whole Star Wars universe.
Any movie with Alan Tudyk in it,
yeah,
it goes up 2 notches right off the bat. That
notches.
Guy could just,
Yeah, he can really do no wrong.
And then, like, to Liam, your point, we had a female character who wasn't all perfect, right? She made a lot of mistakes, and she fought for what she believed in, and she had her own hero's journey throughout the course of the movie where she felt like she was called to action. She didn't know what to do. She eventually decided she needed to do it kind of for her own reasons, which was to rescue her father. But she ends up making the ultimate sacrifice, which is it's no longer about your dad. It's now about saving the universe and really calling the rest of the rebellion together to actually save the day. Just wonderful. That's my I like about Rogue One. And in general, I just really liked this story too, which was really good.
I would also like to point out, because I watched it again the other day and I took notes because I'm a big boy and I can do this properly. There's several points over my pages of notes here where it says just the intro of whatever it was that they were showing and the fact that it was absolutely beautiful. So the cinematography in this, I think, is the best looking Star Wars movie, because little shots like when they're just landing on Scarif and you see all of the other rebels in the landing craft, and it was very reminiscent of like a World War II landing craft in a movie, and you get that tension and that emotion to it. Or the first time you see an AT-AT or an AT-AT, I guess it's an ACT coming through the smoke.
Yeah.
And like when you first see them in the original trilogy, they're kind of cool. They're stomping around in the snow, and that was a neat idea. And in this, you can see that they really are weapons of terror, and it's this giant thing coming in to kill you.
It was a monster.
Yeah, they were finally able to use it the way that it was meant to be used.
What Liam's going on about there that was perfect because it sort of stopped. It was a monster as far as I was concerned. It stopped and it looked at them. And then they were like, run. Yeah. Run now.
That scene could have been in Jurassic Park.
I want to ask a question, which was to do with the marketing and to do with, like, in Celebration when they introduced this idea, and as they were talking about it as it was developing, they really said this will be the gritty war film of Star Wars. Did it succeed at that?
I think it did. Like I said, when they were landing on Scarif, that it looked like a scene taken directly out of a World War II movie, just with different costumes in it. And the fact that you do have one of the good guys murdering somebody right at the beginning. It's like, oh, so we're setting the tone like that, are we?
I feel like it also had a little bit of in more modern terms, it had a little bit of Wonder Woman, like what Wonder Woman did when she was running through World War II situations, and I'm not as familiar with war movies other than All Quiet on the Western Front, which is a very classic war movie, not really this level, but it did have that heroic tone to, oh, we have to do this. Especially when it got to the actual fighting.
I would definitely say they hit the mark. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a gritty war movie. There's a lot more to it than just a war movie. Well, actually, you know what? No, I would say it would be, because if you think about I'm thinking way too many modern movies. If you think back to some of the classics where there was more of a story than bang bang shoot 'em up, this really was a good throwback to those. I loved this movie. I had problems with it, but I loved so much more than I disliked.
Hey, that's a good lead into what did you not like about this movie? What either annoyed you or frustrated you, or you were like, poor Cullet. There are other ways to do that scene, but it seems like the new generation of Star Wars movies must have a poorly animated monster in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I
can't disagree with that.
I just feel like it could have been done a different way, but they really, it's like they're playing super homage to George Lucas. Like, here's your weirdly animated monster, George. Here you go. And it's like it's the sacrifice they needed to make to ensure that he's happy forever, is like, make sure that there is a weirdly animated monster in the middle of every single Star Wars movie.
Well, in the discussion of weirdly animated monsters, there was also Tarkin.
Let's talk about the CGI. Yeah, that's a good lead-in.
That was about as human looking as Superman's mouth in Justice League.
Well, here's the thing about that. I actually saw that. I watched that and I had a big problem with it. Then I had to go and rewatch episode 4. That man does not move his upper lip in the entire episode 4. And that wasn't CGI. Like, that was my big problem, is his upper lip doesn't move. And then I watched the movie and I'm like, nope, that was accurate. That was about as accurate as you can get.
And then, of course, Carrie Fisher's animation at the end as well.
I had a problem with that from 2 points. My 2 problems, I saw it twice in one night. Yeah, I know. First time I saw it, it was really, really obvious it was CGI. It looked worse than a bad rubber mask. It was so... I don't know if it was a theater setup, but first time I saw it 3D, 3D, and it was just so obvious that she was just... It was almost like it did look like a bad CGI. It just looked glistening as opposed to everybody else.
Yeah, it looked like it was straight out of Rebels.
Yeah. And then the weird thing was I actually watched it again, well, about 20 minutes later. I saw it in the IMAX 3D. And I don't know if it was something to do with the contrast of the previous movie, but the second time I saw her, it actually looked a lot cleaner and a lot better. And it might have just been the format. I don't know.
I found her to be better in the 3D as well. So I think that might actually call into place. And I feel like they were actually more successful with Tarkin's animation with what they did. There were people that didn't know that Peter Cushing was long since dead, and that was a computer animation. And when you told them that after the movie, they were like, what? So I feel like for people that knew, we had the uncanny valley moment. For people that didn't know, it was a little bit more believable because they didn't know. And for some people, that was enough. I'm interested to see when I watch it with my kids, whether they know that he's CGI or not. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see.
Well, yeah, because knowing the face and being able to recognize him as Peter Cushing, they did a really good job on it. But that's the problem, is that it's so close to being perfect that the little bits that aren't, they're so glaring. And that's the uncanny valley thing, is that he looked just terrifying.
And the voice was really close too.
Yeah, the voice was really well done.
And that was actually the actor's voice. That was the guy does a Cushing impersonation.
Yeah, no.
That was him.
Yeah, they got so close, and I feel like it was, for what it needed to be, was successful, But yeah, they have a little bit to go with this. I feel like there's going to be more and more of this. Like we've seen some of it in the Marvel universe with Robert Downey Jr. and his younger version of himself. And, you know, it seems like something Disney's really working on in general.
Well, they tried it in Tron too. They tried.
They tried.
They didn't succeed.
there.
But that was...
They are getting better.
Yeah, they are getting better. I mean, the Robert Downey Jr. one in Civil War was crazy good. But it had the ability to be, oh, that was a projection or some sort of computer animation anyways. So it like allowed the audience to be like, anything weird about it was almost acceptable. Okay, let's talk about just briefly the music. I really loved the new Rogue One theme, which was melodic, sad, sacrificial, and appropriate. And it felt a lot like the main theme, but sad. That's my only point. On that. Let's talk about Darth Vader. Darth Vader.
I got to say this. I had literally just finished a few months prior helping a friend of mine build a Darth Vader costume.
Mm-hmm.
I hated the Darth Vader armor in this movie.
Oh,
to the point where I was like, I was sitting there fidgeting in my seat going, you didn't do that. Out of all the other armor, they turned it into these stylized versions, sort of the perfect version.
Mm-hmm. They kind of combined all the versions, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, like the Stormtrooper armor, like vents were real. They weren't stickers. They were, raised bits. And like the Shore Troopers were a modded version of the Stormtroopers. And I mean, I'll even say this. Those Death Troopers, the guys in black, they were really nice. They were supposed to be the high-tech experimental versions.
Mm-hmm.
But Vader. I could literally go through every single piece of this. Like his shoulders were a little too slumpy. Those red eyes were a little bit too like
the lenses were too red, right? Like I noticed that,
and they were too bubbly, and they were and it was. I originally thought, okay, first time I watched it, I'm like, well, that's on Mustafar. That's a lava planet. That's a lava reflecting. No, that's just, cheap acrylic. Sorry.
You were making excuses for the armor as you were seeing it, which you shouldn't have to do because that takes you out of the moment.
And that just made me mad. I mean, Vader is the ultimate bad guy of our generation. I mean, that is sort of, and that armor was just too wrong. I have a friend of mine who just finished the Legion's first Rogue One Vader, and they've been working on that since the movie came out. That's how hard these things can be to get right. And his looks perfect, but that is not my Vader.
It looks perfectly wrong.
Well, I'm trying not to turn into Raging Nerd Boy. I mean, that was one of the very few times in my life.
Hashtag not my Vader.
Yeah.
But his character, I would say the voice of James Earl Jones was lovely to have back. Mm-hmm. He sounded older.
Back to tank.
Oh, the back to tank. Let's talk about that scene for a moment. So... Okay.
And nobody looks good when they're soaking in a back to tank.
Director Krennic comes to visit Vader while he's having his bath time, and I remember seeing some it was like screenshots of the behind the scenes of the Rogue One proppy department, and there was this crazy It looked like Hayden Christensen's torso in the proppy department. And I was like,
I believe it.
But burn victim Hayden Christensen, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, what are they doing with that? Did they mold Hayden Christensen?
Maybe.
Because he visited the studio a bunch of times, and people all thought it was for episode 8, but again, we didn't get any episode 8 Hayden Christensen.
I loved the fact that that Vader, even if he doesn't know his kids, did take the time to make a dad joke while he was there with Krennic.
Oh yeah,
the whole I'm force choking you when I'm hiding my hand, and then make sure not to choke on your ambition.
We have to talk about all of the dad joke Vader sequences, because the worst one is in Empire when he's like, "I would like you to join me for dinner." Like he's just like super cheesy. Dude doesn't even eat, and he's being super cheesy.
He prepped a meal. He set a nice table, and Han just comes in and starts shooting like a big dick. I mean, give the guy a break.
keep going. She's gonna shoot coke on her nose.
And then, like I said earlier, when we get to Vader on the ship at the end of it, stomping through the hallway and getting his Voorhees moment,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now I get it. That's why everyone is so scared of this guy.
Oh yeah, no, he's
Because
scary.
he was scarier than the AT-ACT coming through the smoke.
Well, I mean,
It
that
was
was the ultimate horror movie scene. I mean, I didn't want to step on it
man.
when you were talking about it, but
It
that
was,
scene made up for the armor as far as I was concerned.
It almost looked like they got Sam Raimi to take over the cinematography of that because it's classic horror trope scene.
Oh, yeah. It was amazing.
I loved it too, and if you look at it, it looks like he turned off of the lights that are on the front of his chest to be totally in darkness, and then when he ignites his lightsaber, the lights come back on. It's like, what kind of drama queen are you?
Well, that box on his chest actually plays his music while he's killing people. That's what it's for. So it was that he hit play and then turned on the lightsaber and then went in.
As far as like the tie-ins to larger canon, there was the 2015 run of Darth Vader, with including this kind of mini run of Vader Down, which crossed a whole bunch of comics. I highly recommend it to anyone who loves to see Vader kill people en masse. He has this epic line, and it ran through my head when I saw that scene. I think the line goes, and if I get it wrong, I apologize, but I think the line goes, a rebel guy comes up and he's aiming his gun at Vader, and he's like, can't you see you're surrounded? And Vader goes, all I see is fear and dead men. And then he proceeds to kill everyone. It's epic. So please do check it out if you're interested in that. What did you guys think of the guy in the suit, Spencer Wilding, who was the guy who wears the headphones in Guardians of the Galaxy in the prison that pisses off Star-Lord? What did you think of like his physicality, especially swinging the lightsaber and all of that stuff?
I thought he had a good Vader stomp.
Oh,
Like he had the walk and the moves in that, but the fighting style was much more modern cinematic. So it wasn't the same as Dave Prowse in the suit, which was much more
kendo,
much more basic and much more simple. Yeah, and more kendo based. But it didn't strike me as a betrayal of that. It was just, this is the way that fights are done cinematographically. I made up a word today. They brought the fighting into modern times and modern cinema without really like spitting on the way that they used to fight. I thought it was physically done very well.
and it was suspenseful, and you felt for the crew of Admiral Radiss's ship.
I mean, I liked it. I like the fighting styles. The one thing I really, like I said, it was a lot of the things that they did is they took what was in the classics. I mean, in episode 4, David Prowse was in a really, really bad biker suit.
Yeah.
That's what that thing was. Episode 5 and 6, I mean, David Prowse, he's a former bodybuilder who's kind of letting himself go in those, and he really was starting to get, I don't want to say old, but there's a certain point where you pushed your body a little bit too far and you're kind of creaky, and he couldn't do
Yeah.
a lot of these moves. It was a lot more like you kind of expect. I mean, it kind of went back to the Hayden Christensen and the Jedi and the prequel movies and their fighting styles, where it's a lot more, and he had to adapt it because, I mean, he's now a cyborg. He can't move like he used to, so he has to adapt his style to that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more stomping, like what you said, Liam, in his movements, and like using his force powers to like slam the guy on the roof and to run the guy into the other guy and then stab a lightsaber. Like, it was like, if you had telekinesis, how would you fight a fight? You would do it with the least amount of effort on your physical body and use your force powers to help you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and another nod to the cinematography of it, of setting that fight scene in a hallway, was a brilliant decision because it gave you that I'm trapped in a small place with a monster type of that claustrophobia and that fear, but it also kept his movements fairly small. And it didn't allow for the big flourishes and twirls that we had in the prequels, which made Vader seem like more of that efficient, monstrous killer.
Yeah, more like a robot cyborg killer, like he actually is.
Well, and it also goes back to sort of the meta, I like saying meta, I guess. A lot of the things about Vader that are in the books and stuff. Vader he's not a happy camper. He's
No.
in pain 24/7. that suit does not feel comfortable on him. It is painful, so he doesn't want to move if he can help it. So every move is calculated to be the most efficient thing he can do. Mm-hmm. That's the way I took that scene. And I mean, like you said, that was perfect in the hallway. Because, I mean, that emphasized the fact that he was like, I'm just going to pin you against the wall, and then I'm going to swing and take up for you in one move.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said, and it got my heart pumping for the moments that he was on screen and for the moments that you couldn't even see him, but people were running away from him, and then his frustration at the end as the Tantive 4 launches out and the Death Star plans are slipping through his fingers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, it kind of tells you, why is it at the very beginning of the quote-unquote first movie, why is this dude so mad? And they just, here is exactly why this dude's so mad.
He's literally like just killing everybody on the ship because he's just so pissed off.
Well, and the plans are right there.
Yeah. Exactly. So let's talk a little bit. We had this brief argument previously when we did the review of Solo. I was like, no. This is, is Solo going to be the first movie without active Force? But this was actually a fairly Force heavy Star Wars story in that we had a lot about kyber crystals, which resonate with the Force and are used for lightsabers and eventually for the Death Star weapon. And we've seen in Rebels that the Emperor was looking for those giant crystals, probably to focus the energy of the Death Star to create effectively planet-sized lightsaber. And in Jedha, we see an entire planet focused around the religion of the Force with the Guardians of the Wills, which is the order that protects the temple on Jedha, which is filled with kyber crystals. And we see like the iconography in Jedha with the fallen, almost Jedi warriors that look an awful lot like Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I guess all Jedi kind of look that way unless they're aliens. We see Chirrut Imwe, the blind martial artist who uses the Force to fight. Probably would have been taken to the Jedi Temple had he been born at a different time.
Oh, no. He's actually a Force. He doesn't use the Force.
I thought he did.
The Force is just with him.
Oh. Interesting.
He's if you go with the sort of the overall, he's Force sensitive. He can hear the Force. He can feel it. And the Force guides his actions.
He hasn't been trained. Yeah.
Very, very strong with the sensitivity, but he doesn't have the ability to move. He can't manipulate the Force by will.
Right. No. Yeah.
Yeah, and he can just sit back and the Force directs his movement. And then you combine that with, like, he's got increased senses. Obviously, there's something a lot more happening there than just standard.
Yeah. I got the impression that he was a Force sensitive, which in the game that was always the precursor to becoming a Force wielder. And yeah, like he just hadn't had the training. He hadn't gone down that path because he was unable to. But what do you think of Jedha and like the world building that they did with that, especially like looking at it more like a religion? And with the Guardians of the Wills, and do you guys know where that comes from?
Jedha, I really liked it. I kind of want to see I kind of was hoping Rebels was going to do a side trip there at some point. I wouldn't mind seeing what it was like in his prime. I mean, that was a Vatican City.
Yeah.
That was nothing but Jedi religion everywhere. Those temples were huge. They were monuments. And I wanted to see what that looked like in his prime before, the Empire decided to go in and rip everything out of the walls.
Now, when they first arrive on Jedha, and you're at the scene where Saw's troops are capturing the pilot whose name escapes me right now.
Bodhi.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I paused it and I backed it up because it's something that I remember from seeing it in theater. And I had to go back and double check and double check the wide shot and everything like that. But when they start the scene, there's that statue, like the giant statue of a Jedi lying on its side, half buried. And then when they leave, it's lying on its other side.
You caught an error?
And I backed it up to look at the wide shot. They only show the one statue. Like they could justify, oh no, this other statue was just out of frame and they've been walking for 5 minutes. But to what I saw, to mine eyes, they had a giant Jedi statue roll over while they were cuffing the guy.
It wasn't comfortable, okay?
Yeah. Its bed was made out of sand.
Or that maybe the statue was just very strong with the Force. I don't know. I'm just a casual fan.
No, that's a good catch. I didn't notice that. And did you guys notice any other kind of errors or continuity issues?
I am bad for that. I mean, I will notice things if I decide to start dissect. There's a few scenes where I spend a lot of time focusing on them, but that was more from the getting details out of 3 seconds of screen time of a prop.
Yeah, for me, it was the fact that this 500-foot tall statue
Was it in the wrong place?
I had to go and back it up and check the wide shot and see if they showed that maybe 2 of them had tipped outward or inward towards each other, and that would justify why there's one on each side. But I didn't see it, but I might be wrong.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't see that, but that's great that you caught that.
But I loved the visual of the Star Destroyer hovering over the city. I thought that was beautifully done, and again, it gives that feeling of foreboding. And then the entire destruction sequence when the Death Star first fires.
Oh, beautiful.
That sequence, beginning to end, is one of the best scenes that I can think I maybe have seen in any movie ever. From the monologue from Galen when he's speaking the message to Jyn, and they've superimposed the audio from that over the buildup of the firing sequence and the initial firing of the Death Star and that destruction. That was so powerful and so beautifully done that it's just I'm just talking about it and I'm getting all goosebumps.
It was awesome. I really liked how in that scene you also just before that and kind of throughout the Tarkin scenes, you got to see that there's in the Empire a lot of politics, and Tarkin basically uses every opportunity to make Director Krennic feel like crap. And then eventually takes his all the credit for everything that happened. Yes, we I keep on thinking of that webcomic, and I honestly do not know who made it, but it's the guy who's like, I made this, and then the guy takes it from him and is like, I made this. But insert Death Star there.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I did have a bit of a nitpick when they're on that planet and they're having the fight with the stormtroopers in the town square. That I understand that stormtrooper armor has been proven to be less than effective against let's say lasers and sticks and teddy bears and basically whatever gets thrown at them. But the point where Chirrut kicks dirt in a stormtrooper's face and it works.
Yeah, what's up with that, James?
Yeah, guy who has the armor.
It's probably because
it's a human reaction.
They can't see at all, and more stuff in their line of vision means they really can't see.
It's one of the problems people like to do is they like to do that little, hand in your face. And when you're dealing with a limited line of vision and suddenly something is there that wasn't, you jump.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've had that happen at troops. So, there you go.
Okay, I will accept that.
I loved how pretty much the whole arc of K2SO, but especially when he comes upon them and Jyn shoots the other robot and he's like, did you know that wasn't me?
He could be the ultimate comic or the ultimate straight man.
Yes.
He was doing both parts.
His lines were just fabulous. What the probability of her betraying us, it's high. It's very high.
I've got a bad feeling about because they had to have that in there.
And then they hush him.
Every Star Wars movie has that line in it.
Yep.
Has that in the Wilhelm scream.
Was it in that scene, the Wilhelm scream?
The Wilhelm scream is during the final battle when the X-Wings are strafing the turrets in the big shield installation. There's a scene shown from inside that where the big guns are being blown up. One of them flips over onto a stormtrooper, and that's where you get the Wilhelm scream.
And I found out that there's actually 6 versions of the Wilhelm scream. So it could be any of those 6 that is in the movie, but one is particularly Star Warsy in its nature.
Yeah, that one, the actual sound clip that they take it from, I believe is titled Man Eaten by Crocodile.
So what did you think of the end, sort of, they had to go to Scarif to get the plans because it's this archive that is also this paradise. It's like building an archive in Hawaii. Okay, go. Who got the requisition order on that one, Empire? So they have to go to Scarif, which has an entire planetary shield, which is like, why don't more people do this? And reminded me of Spaceballs.
So what they just needed to do is go into the shield installation, type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they could have gotten in.
Just had the giant vacuum cleaner.
What sort of idiot would have that as his combination to his luggage?
So it reminded me a lot of Spaceballs because of the giant shield around it, and that it was this paradise, and that like all of these data archives of all of their designs and all of their, I guess, communications were also there too, because Krennic came to pull all of Galen Erso's communications.
It's an Imperial archive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's an archive installation. I mean, I'm working IT, and you know what? I want to go to an archive like that. Most of the places we deal with are large warehouses.
Yeah, this was very well organized. They must have some really good librarians in the Empire. I mean, it wouldn't be that well organized unless they had some good librarians / archivists. My comment, because my mom's a librarian. And, they have landing platforms. They accept new data, obviously, and they sneak in with their troops, and they end up getting trapped because the shield closes. And Admiral Raddus attacks and just says, like, screw it, guys, we're going to rebel. And then everybody ends up following and taking suit and all of those things. And it ends up having this most epic space battle and land battle.
I did notice when all of the rebels were ready to join in and they're all getting to their ships and there's all the announcements coming over the loudspeakers at the rebel base, they did call General Sebulba to go and join the battle.
No, it was Hera Syndulla.
Was it Syndulla? Because I don't know who that one is. That's from Rebels, isn't it?
General Syndulla.
Okay, I thought they had called General Sebulba, so I misheard an Easter egg as a different Easter egg.
Exactly. And you actually see Chopper kind of slightly off screen, a little to the side.
And you see the ghost twice.
And you see the ghost as well.
I did have to... I made a note of it that when they are infiltrating the archive base on Scarif, they sort of do a slow reveal of K2SO extracting data
that was dark.
From another droid's head, and that looked like possibly the most violent moment of the entire movie.
It was dark. That whole thing. I'm planning on doing a droids review of K2SO eventually, and kind of like his arc and kind of what it means for droids in general. And he didn't want to do that, but Cassian was like, you basically have to go and violate.
You have to listen to all of my commands.
Yeah,
no matter what I tell you to do, you do it.
You have to go and violate this other droid. And K2SO is like, fine. Yeah, no, I find the droids in Star Wars super fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of it was Canary Wharf, right? The sets that they used when they used real locations, they were able to Star Warsize them very quickly and easily, which was really great.
I think I agree with something Liam said, and it's the cinematography, the layouts, the sets of this the entire movie, just beautiful. I mean, I could just watch the scenery and all that stuff, and there's people doing stuff somewhere doing that, but all of that was just the people who did this did their jobs amazingly. They did the groundwork. They looked for places. And there's something about using real world places that almost not all, like if it's done right, is a better than trying to dress a set.
And they started that again. I mean, the prequels, they did use a lot of real places, but they had a lot of CGI backgrounds and things like that. But TFA, they did more real locations than they had in a really long time. And Rogue One continued that. It looks like Last Jedi also had a lot of real locations, at least the sets that people were interacting with, you know, and like the droids are all real. Alan Tudyk was actually there wearing his little weird suit, but they were interacting with him and his stilts.
Oh God.
And his long grabby hands.
There's a funny story Tudyk says about that one. He actually met Anthony Daniels.
Yeah, I saw him on the droids celebration panel.
Well, they were chatting about that. Yeah, you saw that. And that was one of my favorite lines because I was there and just burst out laughing because he and Anthony Daniels were speaking and he's like, yes, I'm the new droid. Do you have any advice for this? And he's like, well, are you doing this CGI? He's like, yeah. And you wear one of those funny suits? Yeah. And so you're not getting screwed into your suit. You're not having to walk around in hard plastic. You're gonna edit this out in a second. F*** you. And I can believe it. Anthony Daniels is hilarious.
Yeah, he is so proper. I can't believe he used.
He was not happy. Yeah,
but he is fluent in over 6 million forms of communication, so I guess it makes sense.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to add before I kind of talk about the last two things?
I did appreciate now having seen The Last Jedi and, you know, thinking about it possibly more than an adult should be thinking about a movie since then, that while they're going through the files looking for Project Stardust, they made a point of saying that they've come across a file for hyperspace tracking.
Nice. Yes. Good Easter egg.
Oh, yeah.
And there's also, it's a movie trope that I understand how it works for dramatic and plot purposes, but like these guys are in space. They're talking to each other fairly easily from ship to ship. They've obviously got advanced communications. When word gets back to the rebel base that there's rebels attacking Scarif, instead of just using a cell phone or a radio or what have you, the person has to run to find Mon Mothma and tell her that there's rebels attacking. And it's something that, now that I've started becoming aware of it as a movie trope, I do find it kind of takes me away from it of they have to find a way for easy communications not to work in order to add drama.
It's like how you will notice that the entire Rebel base is filmed with a teal and orange filter. And that is, teal and orange is used to cause the human psyche to feel anxious. And
yeah. I do have to say, despite my nitpicking on other sort of CG-faced characters, Mon Mothma looked fantastic. I'm not sure if that was just an actress that looked really much like the original.
That was the actress that played her in the prequels, and she had aged by like how many years? Like 15 years, and she played her again. Yeah.
Okay. Because she looked right.
Well, and they got an actress who could pull off those lines in the prequels, but they cut most of her dialogue, and you only see her in the background.
Yeah, for me, the one thing I'd like to say about it before we switch off to the next topic was, and I just blanked on
Jimmy Smits.
It was Bail Organa.
Yeah, Jimmy Smits.
I mean, you know, the number of years between Clone Wars and Episode 4. What sort of hard living was Obi-Wan doing on? I mean, you know, Jimmy Smith's a little gray, but still very debonair and handsome. And Obi-Wan got old.
Well, it's that desert living. Desert living not even once.
It's because Obi-Wan was actually Ben, Obi-Wan's clone. Everyone knows it. That's why he doesn't remember anything from the prequels.
It's the rapid aging, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we mentioned a few Easter eggs, but was there any other Easter eggs that you particularly liked? I liked the two guys that are in A New Hope's cantina scene. It's like Dr. Oh, James, help me out. Do you remember their names? The two guys that...
Lumpy Nose and Buttmouth.
Yeah, exactly. And they were in Jeddah, and they run into Jyn and Cassian as they're passing them and get all angry or like uppity It's like, wow, those guys were like literally going to their ship to go to Tatooine. Like,
Yeah, it's Ponda Baba
Yeah.
and I can't remember the other one. Yeah, I can't remember the human one, but
What-
I remember the
the
walrus
the
guy.
human is Doctor something. Anyways,
Yeah.
like some of them had very silly names from the original movies because it was just the costume and creature designers like giving them funny names. And I really loved the blue milk in the beginning scene of with Jin and her little stormtrooper doll that she had that you kind of
Oh, yeah.
flashed to a little bit. Like just it was like the set dressing was super on point. And then we also got a little flash in one of the back flashes with Galen and Jin as a child when he was working for Director Krennic. And that scene, wherever they were, felt like Coruscant, like the internal view of a Coruscant building. So it felt very in line with prequel art setting or sets, and set design.
Yeah.
Anything else that you guys liked from an Easter egg perspective?
Well, I mean, I've already dropped this about the ghost, but I mean, I can still remember watching it. And when they're coming in and there's the landing pad, and then it was only there for a second, but I'm like, well, I need a remote. No, go back. Because you see, like, there was the ghost right there on Yavin 4 with the other ships, just sitting there on the landing pad. I'm like, of course, I was lucky enough, like I said, I saw it a couple hours later, I'm like, yeah, that was the ghost. And I mean, seeing Chopper, like the fact that they put so much effort into bringing this forward was just, and as a nod to the fans.
Yeah.
But it wasn't cheesy.
It wasn't cheesy. It was subtle.
You know, there isn't that. Look, we like you guys. See, we brought stuff here. No, it didn't feel like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it felt appropriate that they were there. It felt good, and I screamed unreasonably about Chopper being there. I was like, Chopper, and people are like, what? So if there's nothing else, I kind of want to talk about if this was again the gritty war movie, almost like action adventure war movie, because it had a little bit more to it, like they were trying to find plans, maybe almost like a spy movie in a way too, because they were trying to sneak in and get the plans. It certainly had that like Mission Impossible type
Dirty Dozen
feel.
kind of idea.
Yeah,
Like that kind of
yeah.
movie.
So this is that movie of Star Wars. What is another genre of movie that you would like to see as a Star Wars story? I feel like this is kind of a fun topic to leave off on.
Though it's not a genre that I typically move towards, I think with a few of the effects and a few of the visuals and the emotions that they've managed to elicit with this movie, I think almost a suspense horror movie set in the Star Wars universe could be very effective. Like if they set it somewhere that's being beset by Sith and there are no Jedi to protect them, and how would regular people deal with that sort of thing where there are essentially these superpowered monsters coming through?
Yeah. And they could even do a suspense type horror movie with even non-force users, right? Like they could do something, because there's a lot of weirdness out there in the universe. And I feel like there was a couple of moments of suspense in KOTOR. Like there was one where I think it might have been KOTOR 2, the mining colony, and stuff like jumped out at you and surprised you and stuff like that. Like it's all within the potential of what they could do. Just the right story would be really cool. James?
I think, you know what? I actually think I would like to see a, yeah, this is going to be a total ripoff because, name dropping. I wouldn't mind seeing something set in sometime after TFA and Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Maybe in episode 9, but an Indiana Jones style where they're attempting to find the lost Jedi artifacts. Something where they're going around.
It could even be between TFA and the Return of the Jedi. It could be in that 30-year gap.
Yeah, where they're attempting to try to, recover stuff that the Empire, or even older things that were lost because the Jedi were pompous jackasses.
Yeah, well, Luke had to get those books from somewhere.
That's cool. I love that idea. I would like to see political thriller done right, not the prequels. Not that I don't think that they did some things right, but the Bloodline
Misa call for vote of no confidence.
Claudia Gray's Bloodlines book is wonderful, and it shows how you do politics right. So even if they did a young Shiv Palpatine entering the Senate and then being corrupted and like showing it from maybe the perspective of the senator that he ends up having to kill or something like that, that would be really cool. I just want to see Star Wars politics done right, and that's just, you know, my desire for the universe in general. There's also kind of the interesting idea of like, how would you do the movie Clue, where people are stuck like on a ship and somebody has murdered somebody and they have to figure out who?
What would be really interesting in either of those is if they did it entirely within something that's Empire controlled. So you know that these are all the bad people essentially, but you're going to have heroes and villains within that subset.
And they've shown those sorts of stories in adjacent canon before, like Lost Stars digs into kind of that there is good people in the Empire. We've seen Agent Callus in Rebels, kind of who's actually a good person on the wrong side. I think that's great. Like if it was actually an Empire-centric movie.
Well, you could do a really big mind flip to somebody, because I mean, despite what the Empire is to a lot of places, do a complete mind flip. Have something where the Star Destroyer shows up at a planet and actually
saves the day.
Helps. I mean, you know, where the rebels are
terrorists.
You know, they're not good people. They're doing stuff to this planet because this planet is causing problems for the rebellion. And the Empire has to come in with this, you know, gallant crew that are doing the right thing, and just I'd love to see that, just especially to see the fans' reactions.
I mentioned this in my droids episode, but I'll bring it up here. I would love to see a droids Spartacus story where you have a droid that frees themselves and then goes on to free a whole bunch of other droids and end up having a massive conflict. But we see it all from the perspective of the droids.
Yeah, I'd watch that. It says Star Wars on the title. I'll watch it.
I know, right? I know. Yeah, so I think we've, covered most things about Rogue One. Is there any final thought you guys have about Rogue One?
I would like to put out to two bigger Star Wars fans than myself. How did you feel, or how did you react when it's getting close to the end of it and things are starting to get pretty real, and you start to notice that, oh my God, they're actually going to kill off absolutely everybody.
Oh man, that was spoiled for me at Celebration.
Oh.
Can I tell you the story?
It's your show.
The actor who plays Baze, Wen Jiang. So they brought the whole Rogue One cast on the stage. And this is my suspicion about why there might not be a Celebration for a little while, because they have to make sure everything is on point, and they actually didn't allow as much talking from the Last Jedi crew. But so everybody's talking about how they really enjoyed the experiences, and it could have been an English lost in translation thing, but he's like, "Oh, he die, I die, everybody die." And then I was like, oh my God, did they actually say that? And Kathleen Kennedy she totally reacted like, oh, we're never doing this again. Because it was a live stream.
For me, it actually was probably one of my top 5 favorite Star Wars movies. And the fact that nobody made it out made the point. Because, I mean, this was not a happy ending, but it was a good ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was the right ending.
Yeah, and I mean, they said in one of the interviews, the guy's like, well, we kind of came up with this idea where we could do all these, and then we could try to maybe get them escaping, and then we went, no. It just seemed like too much of a plot hole for them to crawl out of.
Well, and I think it would dishonor the story. That it shows the entire movie, the theme of it was basically how far are you willing to go? And to have them escape, it would have dishonored the journey that they'd gone through. And had they lived to go on, it would have more or less forced them to shoehorn them in later, because that's how they tend to work in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So the fact that they killed off the entire primary cast made it a standalone. And I think knowing that they're not coming back and that, bam, here's the story just gives it that extra bit of oomph that you don't see a lot of anymore, because everything is about world building, about franchise building nowadays.
Now, here's food for thought on this one. What was happening down on the planet was also happening on Radiss's ship. It doesn't matter what happens to me so long as the plans make it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're chopping through them. Their only goal is to get the plans through that door and get the plans off this ship.
Like all of those
Get the plans through the door.
X-Wing fighters, all of the people down on the planet that end up getting destroyed, all of the, people
The crew members, Vader is Cuisinarting.
Exactly. Yeah. It shows all of their sacrifice. And the latest couple of comics of Star Wars actually have Luke Skywalker talking about Jyn Erso and how much he admired her story once he learned about it after the fact, because he couldn't be the hero who destroyed the Death Star without her, which I love that they tie it all back together into the big story.
I would point out that I am a poor enough Star Wars fan that I got to the end of it, and I did have the thought, however briefly, so don't attack me on this one, where the hell were all the Bothans that were supposed to have been getting that plan? This is just more Hollywood or human washing.
That's the other Death Star.
Yeah, I am aware of that now, but, the only time that they really talked about the getting of the plans, it was, many Bothans died getting me these plans.
Well, it wasn't actually the Bothans didn't get the plans. They just got the location where the Emperor was building the Death Star. But you'd be surprised. This has been going on now for, 2 years? Every so often in my Facebook feed, somebody makes that comment, and they aren't being sarcastic.
I also loved how hashtag Rouge One was also trending when it came out.
Oh, that was funny.
Because it's like, okay, spell rogue.
Yeah.
all of us D&D nerds were fine. Yeah, no, in general, it was, as the first Star Wars story, it did its job. It showed what was possible. People were worried about having movies outside of the main saga, and I would say arguably many people enjoyed Rogue One more than The Last Jedi and TFA. And so I think it proved to them, look, more is possible. I think that there's lots of potential, and we know we have the Game of Thrones guys coming on to do more movies. We know we have Rian Johnson's trilogy. Mm-hmm. I'm just really excited for more stories.
Well, and Hollywood is so focused on sequels and prequels lately, but Star Wars, the universe is so big that they can have a dozen movies set at the exact same time, just shown from different places and different perspectives, and they will all be equally strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they could say, hey, look, this movie happens kind of around the time of Empire, and people would be like, oh, cool.
Well, you could have somebody coming through the academy and learning to pilot, defecting from the Empire, going to the Rebels, learning to fly an X-Wing, and then attacking the first Death Star. Like, you could have it where it comes together and lines up.
Mm-hmm.
Wedge, a Star Wars story.
Yeah.
They brought him into Rebels, which was really interesting. Wedge Antilles is a Star Wars story. Captain Antilles is a Star Wars Captain Antilles is a Star Wars story. No relation to Wedge.
Oh, I was just saying, I'm looking forward to seeing whatever they do. They have my faith that I'm willing to give anything they want to try a shot now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're doing it right.
Yeah.
And with that, James, where can they find you?
As always, you can see what I'm working on lately if I ever update the page. Skull's Armory on Facebook. You can catch me at Skullflare on Twitter. Or usually you can catch me hanging around with the Badlands Garrison for the 501st at one of our troops.
Liam?
People can find me, if I'm being artsy, they can find me at trathoriginals.com or on Facebook at trathoriginals. If they want to find me talking, I've got A Story Not Forgotten on Facebook, and that is through capturinglegacies.com.
And I am Marie Claire, and this has been What the Force. And thank you for joining us. We are available on iTunes, Google Play, and anywhere podcasts are found. And you can reach us out on Twitter at WT Force Show or on our website, whattheforce.ca. Please feel free to reach out to us either place and start a conversation.
Bye!